Hello and welcome. I'm Patrick Curtis, your host and chief monkey, and this is the Wall Street Oasis podcast. Join me as I talk to some of the community's most successful and inspirational members to gain valuable insight into different career paths and life in general. Let's get to it. In this episode, Carlos shares his winding road from a non-target school and graduating with a degree in industrial engineering to the finance world. We hear about how he went from grueling operations work and narrowly avoiding several restructurings to eventually obtaining an MBA from Booth, and why he ended up in FP&A before transitioning to an operational PE role. Enjoy. All right, Carlos, thanks so much for joining the Wall Street Oasis podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So it'd be great if you could just give the listeners a short summary of your bio.
Happy to. Yeah. So a little bit about me. Texas guy, born and raised down in Houston. Lived in Houston until I was about 18. Went to Texas Tech University, got my bachelor's in science and industrial engineering. At Tech, I was the vice president of that chapter of the Institute of Industrial Engineers, and was very fortunate to have gotten to network my way into my first internship with ITT. That essentially kind of just catapulted the next 5 years of my career. Knocked it out of the park. I worked my ass off during the internship, but got promoted by the director of operations. Sent to ITT's Lean Six Sigma Black Belt program, got my Black Belt cert. And really over the next 5 years, just to kind of summarize that period, I've held multiple continuous improvement roles and practiced applying that in different industries. So after ITT, was in aerospace defense with Bell Helicopter, Bank of America, and then lastly, healthcare at Conifer Health Solutions. That's a subsidiary of Tenet. I'd like to talk about my experience in really three chunks, but the next piece or component would be the transition. Is kind of how I think of it. And really, I went engineering because I followed my uncle's footsteps and always looked up to him as a kid. But began to sort of realize that implementation, if you will, the operations space, is really only half the story. You can have an imperfect or a flawed strategy, and you can execute it perfectly, but at the end of the day, it's still a flawed strategy, right? So I wanted a broader business perspective, and I started craving that when I was at the bank. Saw deals come through Bank of America's intranet newsletter. Decided to go for my MBA when I was at the healthcare company, and decided that my time in operations and sort of on the granular process level was probably over. Learning curve was getting a little flat. So started going to Booth while I was working for Conifer. I did the weekend MBA program. It was about 2.5 years of my life that I had no life, but but it was an amazing experience. It's truly humbling experience. I was able to make a transition while I was at Conifer that kind of took me into really the rest of my career. Networked my way into strategy, finance, and then finally, so that was a second role at Conifer. My last role was client facing, or as a client director, managing clients along the Northeast coast. Graduated from Booth, left Conifer, went to American Airlines MBA Finance Leadership Development Team. Stayed there until COVID happened, and jumped when COVID happened for obvious reasons. But that took me into private equity. I got a call from TPG, Texas Pacific Group, and I had no idea that really my experience at TPG would be twofold. I would walk away with some really important insights. One, I didn't want to remain in FP&A for the rest of my career. Found out that I did not have a passion for that, which was a big learning point for me.
Yeah.
But walked away with a lot of useful skill sets. After I left TPG, because of that reason, decided.
What were you doing at TPG? Just a private equity investment associate, or were you doing other stuff like operational stuff? What?
Yeah, thanks for asking. That's an important discernment. So I was not on the front end of the business. What people refer to as the front office deal side. I was actually in there's kind of strategic finance team. I know more and more companies are kind of like relabeling their FP&A team strategic finance.
Yeah.
Nick's theories about the why behind that. But anyway, that was essentially like the crux for the decision to move into venture capital, which is where I'm at right now. It was like, just to put it in kind of plain language, and I realized that I would be kind of like infinitely tantalized, right? Because I was in, maybe the nosebleeds, call it, still in the company and like in the vicinity of all the exciting deal work happening.
Yeah.
But like there is a firewall about 100 miles long, 100 miles wide, high, and it's really impossible to kind of move there from back to front office. So
Yeah.
knew that I wanted to get closer to the deal work and more specifically closer to innovation, which is like one of my core passions. So left TPG, even though I had an awesome experience, I'll say, with the firm at a macro level.
Yep.
Right after that, found a venture capital program that was unlike anything I knew that existed. Essentially, it's like an accelerator. And for those listening who don't know what an accelerator is, this is basically like a boot camp and the term is traditionally used for startups. Startup will go through an accelerator, right? They might get some funding from the accelerator. They'll get some mentorship, some guidance from experienced people and ex-founders.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of brings them up, right? Like kind of like brings them up to the ropes. And that's exactly what this program was, but it was tailored for investors.
Very
And that's kind of where I'm at today. I started that in September of last year, 2021. Finished that as a cohort 14 member at Venture University. And I'm proud to say I'm now with Going VC, which is an awesome, phenomenal program that's very similar. Happy to share more about that.
Awesome. So let's start all the way back in undergrad. So industrial engineering, you said you followed your uncle's footsteps, or he was an engineer. Was finance ever on the radar, or was operations always like what you knew you wanted to do? Tell me a little bit about just like family influence. Was anybody like, hey, you should go do FP&A or any of this other stuff? Or like was MBA even on the radar? Tell me a little bit about that, like as you're going into school and kind of, influences.
Yeah, absolutely. Did not have any family influence along kind of like the finance axis. I'm a first generation college student. My dad was a cop and a musician. My mom worked her way up from a county admin. She worked for Harris County Precinct 4, which is like a quarter of Houston. She's one of my heroes. She all the way up from an admin to the highest position that you can possibly have without being an elected official. So she, chief of staff, reports directly to the commissioner. She's badass.
Awesome.
I look to her for inspiration when the going gets tough. But I will say, though, I will kind of caveat that with saying that I did have a finance influence that was really heavy in my first role. So ITT, where that internship materialized into a full-time role, went to Dallas to manage their continuous improvement program. There was a guy, our controller, basically at that facility, who was just like super sharp. And I think the real kind of influential point, or the stickiness, if you will, there was I saw finance through the lens of this individual's application of finance and his role as being sort of a glue, that kind of connected a lot of, if not all of the other pieces of the business together. Mm-hmm. And I've always been, I guess, something I found out about myself is I really kind of desire like a high level holistic picture of whatever it is that I'm involved in. I like knowing how it works and why the why is the why, right from the very top bottom. So so he really was a heavy influence on me. Did not realize I wanted to go into finance at the time, but that definitely played into it.
Let's talk about that first, like internship. And you said you worked real hard there, and it was lean, Six Sigma, black belt. It's an operations thing, continuous improvement. is ITT really well known for that? I mean, I don't know the space. Like, are they, and so like you're there. What are you doing for 2 years while you graduate? You get the internship. They give you a full-time offer, and then what does that even look like? Is it like, okay, we're going to pay you 40 grand, 50 grand? What is it like, just for the listeners? Because I'm sure a lot of people listening have no clue what that is.
Absolutely.
Like me.
Yeah. Hey, no problem.
Yeah.
Happy to share that. Yeah. So, the internship is, it's something I always skip over because it's, when you're in an interview or kind of like a coffee chat that's like a pre-interview, you want to get to the more relevant, more recent stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's really interesting. So the internship took place at a foundry, which is for those who don't know, it's like a metal casting plant, right? They
Mm-hmm.
just make like metal components. Um, Very, very, very small town, like under 500 people. So for those listening, you may or may not know where Lubbock, Texas is. It's up in the panhandle of Texas. And outside of Lubbock is like, if you think about it as like a planetary system, right? There's like a little moon outside of Lubbock, and that's Slayton. And that's exactly where the foundry was. It supplied metal casting components for vertical turbine pumps at a plant that was located in Lubbock. And they also had a facility down in Dallas. The company did have a really robust Lean Six Sigma program, and kind of what that looked like, that transition from internship to full-time role specifically. The internship contained like a number of just various projects that touched what I would call manufacturing engineering, so like streamlining processes, looking at inefficiencies, sort of leaning that out. All right, so in a way, I was kind of doing what I was going to do as a black belt beforehand, but didn't know it, and also took ownership of the plant's environmental health and safety program at one point because we did have a fatality. We had a guy who his lanyard got caught in the wheel of a forklift and it crushed him. So we had a fatality at the plant while I was there as an intern. And I mean, I look back on this and it scares me a little, but the plant manager, like, I guess, like, just, believed that I would take that and run with it, in the most serious spirit that something like that deserves. So I did. We made a number of improvements, and improved in the eyes of OSHA as well since that finding. So yeah, the director of ops, was in there frequently, especially after the fatality. And I think after we closed out about 295 items on a 300 item list of safety issues that we were going to correct for. I'm talking put up signs, floor plate, everything. Said, would you like to work for ITT full time? I said, hell yeah, absolutely. Like, this is cool. I was just into the learning and into all of it. And so he presented me an opportunity, $50K a year, which was, it wasn't a ton of money, but like for a college kid who had been
right out of school, 2010, not bad. You'll take it.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're not unemployed. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about so, was it hard work? Was it like, it sounds like you're doing mostly like safety stuff, the designing stuff, like identifying potential hazards, but like, were you like commuting there? Like, what were you doing? Were you living out in that little town or close by?
Yeah, I was commuting. I was definitely commuting. It was only about like a 20-minute drive outside of town. So
okay, not bad.
It wasn't too bad. It was very hard work. And Steve wanted to make sure, it's the plant manager's name.
Yeah.
He wanted to make sure that I not only had like the smarts for the job, but he wanted to make sure that I was willing to work hard. And when I say that, I mean that very literally. I mean, me and Jace, another guy who was very influential, he was a full-time engineer. They brought him over to the foundry, and he and I'm serious, by hand put up a 40,000 square foot warehouse that we first redesigned in AutoCAD. Plant manager says, "Okay, great. I love this. I approved the design. Now go build it." Right. So I like, it was hard, man. Texas.
A lot of like not just engineering, but actual manual labor. You guys were like actually putting it together. Okay, so what were your hours like for those 2 years? You say
gosh,
60, 70?
It varied. I mean, like I would say 50 on like a low end, and then there were because I tracked my hours. So it's an hourly employee at that point. There were definitely 80-hour weeks for sure. I mean, we would get to the plant sometimes because we were on the schedule of other individuals who worked there.
Yeah.
George, the maintenance guy, got there at about 4 a.m. usually. So there was many a day where we came and went under the cover of night and darkness. So yeah, that was kind of the picture of like, what was going on at the foundry during the internship. Now, when I got promoted, I got sent to New York for about 6 weeks, 1 week at a time. It was spread over 6 months. And so would get there, ITT would fly people in from, had 3 major divisions. I was in the water tech division, huge company, would fly people in from all over the country. We were in Seneca Falls, New York, Utica, New York. And we would just, go through kind of this course in this class, and we would go socialize and network afterwards. And so, after that, as that was ending, I moved down to the Dallas facility, which was my role, my full-time role. That was different. That was really different. It was no longer kind of working out in the heat, right, under under the Texas sun. I mean, I had like proven myself at that point. So like, I had an office job, but was very, very in the weeds and very like a roll up your sleeves type of gig still. Yeah. Continuous improvement, like applying that Lean Six Sigma black belt cert meant on sort of a generic typical project. I mean, you go out to the plant floor, understand really kind of like where the deficiencies were from an operational efficiency perspective. So there were some processes and areas in the plant that we had streamlined because there was a black belt prior to me.
Yeah.
Other processes were very like Wild West, and you would say like Lean or Six Sigma to somebody, and I mean, you may as well have been speaking an alien language, right?
Yeah.
There was like a cultural thing that had to happen too, and change management. And really that job kind of encompassed just a series of projects that were all geared towards improving operational efficiencies and therefore the bottom line of the company.
Yeah. And so you were there for almost 2.5 years. And tell me a little bit, what started making you think, hey, it's time to move on, or, what made you think next, I'm ready for my next step?
Honestly, just hunger for knowledge and experience. I mean, that is my honest answer.
So how did you even start doing that though? Like, who did you go to? Did you start networking? Did you use LinkedIn? Did you talk to friends? What did you do?
Yeah, I think it was more that I started working as I kind of worked more and more of these continuous improvement and lean projects. I'll be totally transparent. Like it was a twofold. It was kind of a twofold thing where one was the fact that I just got called by a recruiter and the opportunity just kind of came in to me. And the other was, both kind of diminishing returns from a learning curve, as well as I quickly started finding out that there was sort of like this misalignment. And this was one of my main, sort of drivers behind leaving continuous improvement and transitioning my career. Part of that was, management saw the low hanging fruit, right? Like talking the plant manager, director of ops, et cetera. And many of these like low hanging fruit opportunities were not, I guess, cookie cutter Lean Six Sigma projects. They were more like, we need to invest in this tech platform that can streamline this engineering capability for like our engineer to order products. We were making big water stations, so it's still water tech, but you would just have these really big I just made out of tons of like iron and metal. water stations that were like golf course irrigation, potable water, fire, etc. And there was just kind of like this misalignment where my boss, the global director of Lean Six Sigma, wanted cookie cutter Lean Six Sigma projects.
Yeah.
But there really wasn't a hunger or appetite for that at my specific plant. So it just kind of felt like this tug of war thing where I really couldn't create a lot of value in the middle. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, that's fair. So you were like, this recruiter reaches out. What do they say?
Yeah, I don't, man, that conversation happened a long time ago. But
they're like, hey, we got this amazing opportunity for you. You're going to get paid 60,000 instead of 50, or what do they say?
I was honestly pretty much identical. I think it was like 62 is the number. So you almost hit it on the head. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think what really caught me was like, this is going to be aerospace defense. You're going to work on helicopters. I'm like, that's so cool, right?
That's so cool. Yeah.
That's a lot cooler than water technology. So,
yeah.
So I had to, it's just, it was something that I knew nothing about. And something I found out about myself in life is, again, this is one of the major reasons I'm in venture capital today, and I will stay in VC for the rest of my career, save for caveat, a consulting thing I'll talk about later, hopefully. But I like to keep the learning curve high. I do. I get bored if I sort of start learning more and more about less and less, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's fair. So you're you're there for only a year before moving on to Bank of America, this helicopter company. Tell me, what was the stint there? Was it similar to tug of war? Or were you able to actually do something and it was a natural break, or what happened there?
No. Interesting that you ask. There was a union strike and sequesters were happening at the time. Department of Defense budget cuts. Honestly, it felt like the perfect storm within that sector and working within Bell and Textron. Textron was the parent company. So yeah, I went in as an industrial engineer was my official title, and I had majored in industrial engineering, and I kind of like went straight into continuous improvement in a way. You know what I mean? I didn't really kind of get like that true, okay, but what's it like to be a real industrial engineer?
Right.
And so that was like part of the impetus for taking the role. But what happened is the sequesters hit, funding got cut, lots of projects and orders got cut, and the union went on strike. I think that they were maybe like renewing their labor contract around that time, and because of the financial strain the company was going through, there was sort of just some dissonance between the two parties.
So they just said, "Hey, find another job," basically.
No. So I've always been very, knock on wood here. I've been
I'm knocking.
Because it could happen again. I've been like really blessed in my career to have kind of gotten off the sinking ship before it sinks twice now. And no, that is what would have happened. I barely escaped that fate within a 2-week span. So what happened is we had a bunch of skilled labor individuals who were part of the union. And when they went on strike, you had a huge facility for manufacturing that was basically empty, except for what you call the people who kind of like cross the picket line, right? They agree to go work for the company, even though kind of the union's saying don't do it. But you still had like this real just deficiency of labor. You had a labor shortage in the plant. And so the industrial engineers who were kind of used to working on industrial engineering things were sent to the floor to actually like route helicopter blades like by hand. So I've routed helicopter blades for like the V-22 Osprey, which is scary thought. I'm not gonna say it wasn't a cool experience, but like this isn't really what I wanted to do right in my career. So that just kind of like fortuitously happened, and then right around the year mark, still remember her name, a lady named Anita called me from Bank of America. She was a recruiter and said, hey, we're hiring for like this continuous process improvement consultant role. I got really, really interested in that because I've always been into technology, and I just knew like okay, a bank is going to be much more technically intricate than like a manufacturing
I don't
facility.
know. Banks tend to be pretty slow with their tech. I don't know. Well, because
That's
they
fair.
can't change systems that often. But yeah, so tell me a little bit about like what was your so the recruiter called. Were you looking at that point at all, or it was just like, hey,
I knew that I should. I knew that I should start looking. And like my
you
mentor,
hadn't, you hadn't.
I hadn't. I had
Yeah,
not.
and so she called you, and now she's saying, okay, we can pay you 68, or we can pay you 72. What'd she say?
Oh yeah. I think it was right around like
You're like, hey, I should be jumping more often. I'm gonna get a $10,000 raise every time.
right. I know. It can get too addicting, and you can do it too much. Believe me.
Yeah.
But
No, so I mean, okay, to be fair, she called you, it was gonna be a raise again, right?
yep. I think I went into the bank at I was earning around 62K at Bell Helicopter. I want to say I joined the bank at about 80,000,
Okay,
maybe.
big jump.
Like roughly, yeah, it was a big jump. It was a no-brainer move for sure. I mean, I went in, I knew I'd enjoy the work because I wanted to be in like I wanted invisible processes essentially, right? Like things that you can't see coming down an assembly line. And that's exactly what I got. I went in, I met with a lady named Christy and her boss, Eric, both just, I mean, I would consider, if for the right role, going back to work with those people again, just amazing people. And I just we just clicked, immediately. They offered me the job immediately, and it's like, let's go, let's do it. It was also closer to home, which really helped.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So like, what were you specifically doing for them? I'm on your LinkedIn. I can see that, but like in plain English, you're looking at like key KPIs and building dashboards for different business units and stuff like that.
Yeah. I'll say like there were really two parts to the job. One was like the leading continuous improvement projects, which I'd done. That's what I did in my last two roles.
What processes were you trying to improve there internally?
Yeah. So we were in like the global tech and ops division. Within our division, within that, Bank of America is huge. Within that arm, you had like 5 groups, if you will, but then one of those groups was like was kind of based out of Dallas and Atlanta, and it had 4 subgroups comprising it. Basically, this was check imaging operations, check operations, which included the imaging side. That's just, you take a picture of a check with your phone.
Oh yeah, no, I use it all the time. It's great.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I love
Saves the
technology.
trip to the bank. It's huge.
Man, exactly. Oh, hate going to the bank.
I know.
And the other half though was like new to me. It was totally new to me. And I loved it because it taught me a lot about business intelligence. But this part of it was, my boss at the time said like, hey, we need dashboards for these 4, and I'm sorry, I called them subgroups. They're actually called lines of business. Now I'm remembering. Yeah. And you had, a department that was like, that was doing like corrections for deposits, right? Like maybe somebody deposited a check twice or something.
Right.
They were doing that. We had another group that I cannot remember for life me what they did, to be honest. We had a clearing and float team that was super, super highly intricate and technical. And then we had the check imaging department. And a lot of my work was focused around the check imaging department, and then like the corrections and adjustments department. I'm sorry, just to actually finish that thought. So the other half of that role was in designing dashboards and really metrics as well, like KPIs. I mean, literally designing the KPIs, sort of creating them in such a way that they, adequately gave the executives over those 4 lines a very clear picture of how their business unit was performing, almost in real time. Yeah, we had daily metrics, weekly metrics.
So like number of deposits, which one, how many are wrong, or how many doubles, how many whatever, all that stuff. Yeah.
I think you might have just named 4 actual metrics. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. I had a very bright person from the BI team I worked with named Tom at the time, and he just like completely opened my mind to.
So what were you building? What were you doing these in? Python or what were you?
Yeah. We built them initially in Excel, and this was just kind of like getting everything stood up, right?
Yeah.
We had to just kind of come up with like our rough draft, proof of concept.
Yeah.
Tom helped us bring the dashboards to life after the CPICs, continuous process improvement consultants, like develop the actual metric conceptually.
Yeah.
Tom helped us like load those into, I believe SSRS was the tool that we used. They were web-based dashboards.
Got it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Almost like a Tableau sort of like way to visualize data and stuff like that. One of those programs. Okay.
That's exactly right. I'll just kind of finish that thought with like, there's still an opportunity to like apply all this Lean Six Sigma learning. And what we ended up doing is we ended up actually applying control charts, which is, like in very long story short, it was basically like a methodology that was geared towards identifying variation that exists within the process. So to your point, like number of defects, right? Let's say that you average about 50 defects a week. Maybe you're bringing that average down, but if it goes over 100 or if it goes, so you'd have an upper control limit there, upper spec limit. If it goes above 100, like let's set off an alarm and we want everybody on this. So it's basically
something's wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like applying what we've done thus far through like a stats lens. Yeah.
That's cool. That's really cool. So you're there for a couple of years. Sounds like you're learning. You're helping set up these KPIs, these dashboards, learning. And what happened with your next jump? Now you're going to, and at this point, were you considering business school or thinking about business school at this point yet or not yet?
I was. I really was, because I guess like two key events. Number one, that was about the time that I started getting a little bit bored with the continuous improvement thing. I like the dashboard work, but I didn't want to keep building dashboards for my career. So I saw, just kind of like being a curious person, saw the newsletters that BAML would send out over the intranet. And I'd never heard of investment banking before. I had no idea what it was, but I saw like these deal updates come through, and I'm like, what is this? And you could go through like the company directory and sort of like look at, where the banking team sat and everything. I'm like, damn, this is really high level work. Like, good Lord. Started just like, searching around on the internet for like, what is banking, and kept reading deal updates. And I got really excited and more curious about that.
Probably when you found Wall Street Oasis, I'm guessing.
Probably. Yeah.
Back then. Yeah. Okay. So then you, so you're kind of interested in this, and what happened?
Yeah. I became very interested in it. I identified enough about the career path to know that I needed an MBA if I was to like ever explore, that type of work. I had no idea where I was going to get the MBA from at that point, but started studying for the GMAT, a lot of late nights there. And then around that same time, I had a coworker who sat next to me, and one day he tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, like, I know you're bored here. I'm kind of bored here as well. I am going to go back to this healthcare company that I was at earlier in life. There's this really awesome guy named Pinaki Ghoshre. You could learn a ton from him, and he's looking for all the help he can get right now. I really think you should just have a conversation with him," right? And I'm like, I'm not really looking to stay in continuous improvement. He's like, just have a conversation. So I did. I talked with Pinaki, and man, like to this day, that guy is one of the coolest people I have ever met in my career. Like legit, how many prospective managers can you go up to and just say, "Hey, I like this conversation. I like you, but I don't want to do for the rest of my career what your team is doing." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Pinaki was so cool about it because he made me a deal essentially. The guy said, "Okay, I know you want to go in the direction of strategy and finance as you're maybe kind of exploring this MBA path.
Mm-hmm.
I will help steer you in the direction of those two fields, networking wise within Conifer. I'll help you get plugged in there.
He's like, just give me a couple years. He's just give me some years.
Exactly what he did. Exactly. Went into his business transformation team, helped him like stand it up, and did a lot of dashboard work there for him. Standing up KPIs for Conifer Health Solutions, and like he made good on his promise. My second role at Conifer was like inherited this financial model where he's developing financial business cases to give the executive steering committee like a financial picture of what the ROI was for their roadmap of different projects they've got slated.
Cool.
Yeah.
Which makes sense why you ended up in FP&A later. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry, keep going. So you're doing that you're there for 3.5 years at this place. So probably a little longer than you expected.
Yes. I didn't know how long it's going to be at Conifer. Yes and no. My parents are really old school, again, first gen college student. And I think part of that's just like generational, but
they've been at their jobs for like 20 plus years, right? So they're like,
exactly.
You're changing again after 3 years?
Yeah. They're like, people aren't going to want to hire you. You need to stay put, in one place, which I believe them, and I was like, yeah, you're right. But like, even if that wouldn't have been a thing, there were just so much opportunity at Conifer, and looking back, such like an entrepreneurial space. And people were just willing to help you pursue like your curiosity in different fields. So at one point.
So can I ask a question for people who I don't know anything about Conifer. Is it like you actually are owning hospitals? Is it like a hospital network?
That's it. Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a hospital network, and you're like the operations on, like in kind of the finance or operations team, basically helping with all this stuff. Like, so how many hospitals total? Like, just to give us a.
Yeah. So that's sort of it. Very nearly. So Conifer Health Solutions is actually owned by Tenet Healthcare.
Oh, okay.
Tenet owns a ton of hospitals across the U.S. Oh boy.
A lot. Let's just say a lot.
A lot. Yeah. A lot.
100, 200,000, whatever it is.
I want to say it was probably around, like 200 to 500 hospitals, I think. Because they also acquired Catholic Health Initiatives, another large hospital system. So what Conifer did though for like Tenet is there's this really big problem in healthcare on the commercial side where insurance companies as well as people sometimes don't pay the bills or like kind of push back, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't medically necessary or didn't have prior authorization. Yeah. Like a $276 million problem, I think, at the time for Conifer, and something around that neighborhood. But we were basically liquidating AR into cash, and that was it was kind of like the main function of Conifer. That's what I did in that second role, as the business case development. But Conifer also had another little branch or division called value-based care. Value-based care, for those who don't know, is kind of like, in a short sentence, what that is about is investing in the health of a population. It can be for like a health plan for a company, or the same for like an insurance's covered population. Mm-hmm. And you're basically trying to make them healthier so that the plan and the people funding the plan don't pay as much in the long run. It's like a win-win, Yeah,
you're doing more preventative care and stuff like that to try to make it so they're not as sick down the road.
Exactly.
Okay. So tell me, so you're there for 3.5 years. Your boss kind of makes good on his promise. So he writes your recommendation for Booth. You do okay on the GMAT, you get in, but like, were you always did you consider going to the full-time program? Why the weekend program?
Yeah. Good question. So first, I guess, like, I never in my wildest dreams did I know I was going to be going to Chicago Booth and like waking up at 3:30 a.m. every Saturday for 2.5 years to fly to Chicago and back. But I'll be honest, like I nearly walked out of the GMAT. I got so flustered and just sort of down on myself throughout the math portion. Mm-hmm. Math hasn't always been my strong suit, but it's something I've been able to develop. And went into the bathroom, I think after like one of the math sections in the GMAT, and I was just like close to tears, man, because I put so much into this, and like just a lot of late nights. Yeah.
Did you end up taking it a second time?
I didn't. I finished my first attempt, and like I didn't know also that you get your results like right when you walk out. And the test proctor, she was like, "Really good job," and I was like, "You sure you have the right person?" I'm like, "I think you have the wrong person." And I don't know. Yeah, whatever kind of came together happened that day. The miracle, whatever it was, I walked out. I was like 92nd percentile, which is, I don't know, just a lot higher than I ever really considered possible for myself. And
What was it,
so
like a 700-ish or
710, yeah, really
710?
close.
Awesome.
Yeah, really good guys. Yeah, and that just like
That opened a lot of doors.
Exactly. Like that was kind of the thing that hit me on the drive home, and I'm like, wait, I was considering myself like maybe not able to get into like SMU or like UTD, and like now, holy, I can maybe like do something a lot bigger, and or I mean, I still think that those programs have a lot of value. I mean, they're very prestigious and just great programs. But yeah, started looking at the booth and really uh, the diversity, the way, kind of the Socratic debate method of learning in the classroom, just cutting your teeth on like you put a stupid idea out there, you're probably going to get challenged on it by your, so think through things before you speak. That and just obviously like the doors that has opened. I told my boyfriend at the time, I was like, man, I'm going for this, and I mean, we can stay in Dallas if we have to, but like I'm going to do this. And so I did, and kind of just started it. And there were a team of there were a group of Dallasites who were in the program with me, and
They flew with you every morning, every Saturday morning. So tell me, is that normal? Like, are there people coming to the weekend program flying every single Saturday morning, like at 3 a.m., like from California or from like Dallas, from Texas? Is that people do that?
Yes. Yeah.
Is it mostly because of like they don't want to pay for the full-time program, they want to keep their full-time jobs? Is that the thought process?
Yeah. There are like maybe a couple of different reasons people do it. Yeah. Part of my reasoning was I had a dog, I had, a small little family in a way to kind of support. And I knew that, at that point it was like maybe 7, I think 6 years into my career. And you get used to a certain like, quality of living and then I was like, man, I just couldn't even fathom like going back to my family's not rich, you know what I mean? I was gonna have to like take out loans, go live in a dorm or something if I went full time, and I just knew it wasn't an option for me. But it wasn't all that. Part of it too, and this is the other reason a lot of people do it, is they just see some merit, some value in kind of remaining in their current role. As you said, Patrick, that for me was, Conifer opened that door for me to make that transition. Not just open the door, but like there were a lot of advocates there who really, really helped me. I had a ex-Bain consultant who was the VP of strategy at the time. Got guidance and encouragement from him. There was a guy named Tom who was the VP of business development, kind of took me under his wing at a time. So just like these different sponsors in a way of the things that I wanted to do in life, in my career, just making Conifer such a valuable opportunity. I didn't want to give that up to go do the education.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you can go to business school and you made it work somehow, probably pretty tired after those 2 years, but you did, or 2.5 years. So you got through it. During school, were you thinking like investment banking? Did you do any of those interviews? And tell me a little bit about how you ended up in FP&A at American. What kind of said, okay, this is a good place to be, and were you able to stay in Texas?
Yeah. Gosh, you're actually like drawing on some really big insights. You got my wheels turning.
Yeah, no.
like for me, that's a really good question that you just asked because, yeah, going back to Bank of America and kind of that banking inspiration, that fire that kind of got kindled, that is what I had in my mind that I was going to Booth to do at the time. And I did go through banking interviewing. I did. I got really, really close with BAML and the LA office. Like some amazing people out there. By the way, if anybody's looking for a great bank, I highly recommend you check that out. Give David Hook a shout. He's the MD out there. But went through. I had probably like 12 super day. Actually, not that many. I probably had like 7 super days or so. Right, with different firms.
That's a lot.
It was a lot. I got close with a few of them. There was William Blair in Chicago.
Would you have taken that if you had gotten would you have moved to Chicago from there? You probably
I would have. I was so into banking, kind of the thought of it at the time, that I would have taken.
You probably applied to what, like 30 different banks, got, 10 to 15 first rounds, ended up, 7, like you said, 7-ish super days. Why don't you think you ended up with an offer after all that? Because that's a good number of shots on super days. It's not a sure thing ever, right? And it's a super competitive. But tell me what you're like looking back. Was there something where you're like, hey, I should have, was it technical? Was it behavioral? Was it fit? What was it?
Yeah. It was really familiarity and demonstrating interest in the space, I think, is kind of what it came down to.
Mm-hmm.
That was part of it. Now, I will say at BAML, I believe that because it was like down to me and another guy who was an ex-veteran. That's what hard to compete with. I also, this guy who was just one of the interviewers of like 6 or something, just threw me I was prepared. When I tell you I was prepared for the financial question, I drilled myself on those things.
Yeah.
But this guy threw me a curveball that like my advocate in the bank, who was a vice president at the time, he even agreed. He's like, man, that was kind of just,
that was super tough. Yeah.
Super tough. So kind of like got dinged on the technical question there and a little bit of that.
Do you remember what that technical was? You got to remember it.
Oh gosh, I don't.
No? Accounting or like a weird depreciation question, a weird deferred asset or deferred liability type question.
Man, I really.
That's fine if you don't remember. I'm sure the listeners are like, oh, I wonder what that one is. I got to be ready for it.
I wish I could remember. I really do.
All right, go ahead. So continue. I don't want to interrupt. So tell me what your thoughts were, just in general, on the whole process of that.
Yeah, I think that was like the case for BAML, right? Which was like one of the ones I got closest to.
Mm-hmm.
I felt a very strong interpersonal connection with the MD in that office, and he's really close with like one of the VPs who's kind of like my sponsor for that.
Yeah.
And felt like all of the kind of do I like you sort of element that comes into play. Do I want to work long hours with you? Was there?
Mm-hmm.
I just think at the end of the day, there was like that technical, and maybe this other guy just had, I don't know, better fit experience or something. The other bigger reason that I think I'd paint with the broader stroke across the other opportunities that didn't materialize was looking back, having a sort of a familiarity, kind of like familiarity with finance in general and financial markets, and just being able to I'm gonna use a tennis analogy, guys, but
speak the lingo.
Yeah, like being able to get a rally going, that's off script. Nothing that's like a question that's part of this 100 banking interview questions that you memorize, but like I just having like a genuine question and really being able to kind of go deep and speak.
Like the economics, like you're talking about the Fed interest rates and macroeconomics, and you're like, you understand it, but the layers of depth weren't necessarily there that other people who studied finance, accounting, or economics basically could go to.
Yeah, that was it. One of my mentors at Booth at the time, his name was Shane. Somebody I still look up to this day, extremely bright individual, super nice guy. he was kind of just helping me with like little chats and check-ins here and there throughout the process. And
Mhm.
I mean, that's really where I noticed it, because Shane would just like spout off this stuff. He'd worked in sort of like private financial markets for the majority of his career prior to Booth. And I knew I didn't have that. I knew I'd gotten some of that and just cutting my teeth at Booth and like the finance courses. But I mean, I'm going to say this as well. I was extremely humbled by the Booth experience in sort of in the sense that there was, very often just like it was a high curve to climb to keep up with, some of my classmates. I mean, they were just extremely bright people at that school.
Oh yeah.
So just, yeah, grateful to kind of be shoulder to shoulder with those guys. But given the competition, the nature of kind of how sought after those roles are.
Oh, it's really competitive. Yeah, especially for Booth, because a lot of people go into Booth, they want those jobs, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Banking, consulting. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the FP&A stuff. And, you were there at American for a year and a half. Tell me how that kind of came through. And then specifically, what was that role like? And what did you like? What did you not like? And how was it similar or different from previous roles?
Yeah. One thing to kind of like segue into that, was another part of your question I don't think I answered. Why FP&A instead of banking wasn't just because I didn't get a banking job.
Mhm.
Because I was into the idea of consulting at the time. I found strategy consulting probably just as interesting as banking, maybe
Mhm.
less. But I became, again, like I like to keep things down to earth and just be very real about like I'm a human, right? I became single midway through the program. I'm a dog dad. I'm not the kind of I don't believe in offloading a dog to parents or just leaving a dog with a sitter for 100 hours a week, just like banking hours.
Yeah.
So I knew, I knew that I needed to like re-strategize and go back to the drawing board. I knew I was into finance. I knew I was into strategy. American Airlines had a financial strategy MBA program that seemed to kind of satisfy the can't work 100 hours a week, can't be gone 5 days a week sort of thing.
Yeah.
But still kind of belonging to kind of those two fields is really what took me in there. And then to answer your next question, which is like about the FP&A stuff. I guess first I'll say like what I liked about it. A few things I liked about it were the sort of caliber of talent of individuals that I worked with. People in finance, smart generally, really smart individuals, very like quant adept, just very detail oriented. I guess I sort of felt maybe a little, I felt very challenged, and kind of going back to that really high learning curve thing. I think that I'm a pretty heavy right brainer. I think I've always had to work a little bit harder to keep up on the math side, which I'm able to do now, but it took a lot of hard work to get there. And I knew I knew that quant would be an important skill set to have going forward in my career, as well as analysis, detail orientation. So I knew that job would answer those things. I knew that I was working with a lot of really smart people who were going to accomplish really great things in life. Also really love the culture as well. So those were like things that I liked about I guess finance in general, and more FP&A. There's a certain satisfaction that one gets when you're working with numbers, and like there are financial realities that are really hard to argue with, right? Like these are the numbers. It's like, so now you argue about the strategy we take because of the numbers, but like the numbers are the numbers. So there was like a sort of like finite or just like kind of concreteness about it that I really appreciated. And I think in terms of what I didn't really care for as much, or maybe what I didn't feel played onto my strengths. let's say, being sort of, I'm struggling for the right word, but being able to, plain language, being able to sit in front of a spreadsheet and look at the same financial model for,
It's hard.
it's hard. It's boring. Yeah, to me, like,
Especially if you're doing the same model every time. So, okay, so you're there for a year and a half, year and a half or so. COVID hits. Clearly, airlines aren't necessarily a good place to be. Are they telling you find another job, or what was that like? It's saying, hey, this is not looking good.
Yeah. Well, like going back to a comment I made earlier about when we were talking about Bell Helicopter. Knock on wood, right? I've always been fortunate in getting off the sinking ship before it goes underwater.
Yeah.
And that's really saved me twice in my career now. Once at Bell Helicopter, but then again at American Airlines. What basically happened is we were
Stay away
all
from aviation's the message here. No, just kidding.
right.
Airlines are a tough business, but okay. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, we were all like, the MBA finance team was in the room with our CFO one day. We had these like leadership sessions where the MBA team would sit, and we would just kind of hear directly from like a senior executive about their experience and just, I don't know, just different things, right? It would just be kind of a career talk. And probably about like 2 hours after the meeting ends, COVID had just hit. We're talking like mid-March. We all get an email. Everybody who was in the meeting was like, "Hey guys, I'm really sorry to do this, but I may have exposed you all to COVID." So, that kind of, that was like the first of many dominoes that started falling at American, and you just read the writing on the wall where things are going. I got, again, a very serendipitous call from TPG, from a private equity recruiter. It wasn't like I was looking during that time. This time I was actively looking. I was interviewing with the likes of LinkedIn, Google, other big tech firms, but got a call from TPG, excuse me, and knowing, like, I always knew that private equity was kind of one of the outcomes or sort of career paths leading from banking. I didn't know a ton about it at the time, but I knew that it was more of a strategic way of creating really big value in the realm of finance, is kind of how I looked at that space. And that really attracted me. It's like, man, alternative investments. Yeah, I'm in. Like, let's go. So went over to TPG, and
And real quick, can I go back to comp before we talk about TPG? So like, you were at Conifer working throughout your time at Booth. You were making out what, 6 figures at that point near the end?
Close to. Yeah, very, very close to. I think it was 98,000 was my final salary at Conifer.
And then FP&A at American, I assume, was
FP&A
around
110.
Okay.
Yeah, 110. They I think kind of like kept it really like blanketed, like everybody kind of got the same thing,
Same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, which probably. Yeah.
And then TPG, this is middle of COVID. TPG, did they make you a strong offer? Was it even better than that, or was it? COVID, or were they like, hey, we know you're going to lose your job?
They did have a bargaining chip there, and they used it.
Yeah.
That said, I was really proud of myself throughout that interview and kind of negotiation experience. My nature is to be anti-conflict, like anti-confrontational. I say yes too easily.
Yeah. You're like, let's go, let's do it, and then you're like, wait a second, I shouldn't have said yes to the first offer.
Yeah, exactly. I will say they brought
me at 90. Did they come in super low?
Very low, very, very low. They wanted to pay me, I think, like, it might have even been like 75 or 80 something. Yeah, I was like, I can't do this. Like, even on a sinking ship, I'll wait for the next ferry to pass. Right? So, or take my chance with the sharks.
Yeah.
But I I declined multiple times, and we went through multiple rounds of negotiations. Well, finally, at one point, the recruiter, who was not working for TPG, they worked for
one of these third-party recruiters. It's fine. You don't have to remember.
yeah, it was
So you
something.
just kept saying no, and they kept coming back with more and more, offering you more and more.
Yeah, but Parker and Lynch, by the way, was yeah, it got really dark at one point because the recruiter actually told me. I mean, she was like, okay,
she's like, what are you doing? This is COVID. Everyone doesn't have a job. Like, just take this job.
That, and she also said, like, this is the last offer the company's willing to make. Like, if you don't take this, like, we can't, like, we're done, basically. And so I didn't take it. I was like, sorry, like, I know what I can offer, know what I'm bringing to the table. Like, I'm going to be self-respecting enough to stick up for myself there. So I'm not going to lie, I got a little tipsy that night. I was pretty depressed about it.
You're like, it's not happening.
Yeah. Woke up with a bit of a headache to a text message from the recruiter saying, like, we're not done. So it was, they came back anyway, and like, they hit 110, which was like matching what American paid, right?
That's great.
It was good. It was awesome. Yeah, because I had averted this risk of like COVID fallout. I was going to an area I was more interested in.
I mean, I would have even taken the six figures if you could make 100 or 95. I just, because a little bit of a bump with the global pandemic, I don't think is a bad outcome, especially going from American Airlines to a TPG. It's a strong brand on your resume and everything like that. So I think you did very well for yourself.
I think so too. On top of that, they have a really great bonus structure, is the thing I'll say about TPG, even in the back office. I mean, they take care of their people. As an emerging business leader, I'm a big fan of performance-based compensation. I think it makes a lot of sense. Having skin in the game, probably a model I'll kind of pursue in life. But it was like a 20% bonus at the end of the year. I mean, yeah, it was very generous, and they did like a 3% contribution to your 401k, like 5% match. It was good. It was a really good comp package.
And so you're still close to home. You're in Dallas.
Yeah. Well, kind of. Like, the role is in Fort Worth, which I lived in Dallas at the time, but everything was remote because it was COVID.
Right. Okay.
So it was like, we'll kind of cross that bridge when we get there,
And so tell me a little bit about just, you're there for a couple of years, then what's kind of the venture bug seems to bite you. So tell me a little bit about that, and, and then we'll wrap it up just talking about a little bit of the programs and stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So,
or your time at TPG. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your time there. Like, what was it like? Was it super different from American and stuff like that? Because I think you're more on the operations strategy side of like helping portfolio companies. Is that what you're doing?
Sort of, kind of.
Okay.
It had some similarities to American, but it was different in some ways too. The similarities, you're still extracting insights from financial data and like conveying those in an executive communication way, right, that lends itself to action. The things that were different about it were TPG was the Wild West compared to American Airlines, just because of the firm size, the maturity of the organization, the maturity of their technology versus American Airlines. American, we had there was just like these ordained processes and ways of getting data, and like it was just kind of like a lot of stuff off the shelf,
Yeah.
But at a TPG, I mean, it was like, I have no idea if it exists or where it's at, but like, good luck, But that was cool though, because I really got to like take the reins from an entrepreneurial perspective and really take like a degree of autonomy.
But were you doing the work for TPG operations specifically, or were you doing work specifically for their portfolio companies, the companies they owned?
Yeah, no, it was more of like on a corporate finance level. So the way TPG is structured, they've got about like 5-6 different fund families, or I don't know what I forget, divisions basically. And you've got like your growth equity, you've got like your rise, which is like your impact, socioeconomic impact, so et cetera, healthcare fund. And this role was at the what would be the corporate level. It was a private company at the time. They just went public back in February, by the way. And this role kind of liaisoned with the funds, but not with the portfolio companies, right? That was really the domain of the front office.
Yeah, fund level, like the associates down there.
Exactly.
And so you were in more like the corporate office up at the top, kind of helping, trying to pull in data from the different funds up into, got it.
Exactly.
And they're like, good luck.
Yeah.
Trying to pull up quarterlies from like all the different people, like it's like impossible.
Yeah.
Still done in Excel, a lot of it, right?
Yeah. It was all Excel. I mean, it was very like I'll say the challenge of everything kind of being Wild West and Excel based and like not having that technical infrastructure was there, but the expectations that would have belonged at like an American Airlines were also still there. I mean, because it's private equity, right? Like that is like nobody stops that machine, man. That machine keeps going, and so it's that was one of my key takeaways from that was I really, really learned how to get creative and find a way to make it happen on time. And that required building business relationships that I could lean into, tap on different resources for data, information, things on the fly. I mean, you live or die by your business relationships there. And then just how to hustle and kind of get those things done, again, from an entrepreneurial perspective.
It's very cool. So why leave? You're making good money.
Yeah. That's the $1 million question.
Yeah.
So
and looking back, like, is it something you're like, I mean, I guess now you're like, okay, you have some VC experience, you've gone through some of these programs, now that your eyes are here on the other side of those, what's your thought?
Yeah. I had a hypothesis that was kind of in the works that I developed about my, belongingness or not belongingness within that role. And that materialized into a key insight that I got out of that role, which was that, FP&A and sort of that corporate finance space just wasn't my passion. I mean, I was taking a lot of really useful, beneficial, like skill sets and experiences away from it. And I knew that they would do great things for my career. But at the end of the day, I mean, I was just bored. And I felt like kind of the diminishing returns sort of effect where,
learning curve was flatlining again. Yep.
Exactly. Like you would take on a new model and like build it out, and that was cool and exciting. But then like once the thing was built, it's like, okay, now your job is to just kind of like turn the rent. Yeah, like press the button, right? And so it was not that simple, but there was obviously like an insight and analysis component that kind of kept things interesting. But how I knew that I wasn't passionate about it is because I didn't feel energized by it internally, but it was also because B, I saw something in that role that I was really, really, really passionate about that I wanted to go chase after. That was the work that was happening on the front lines, like down in, down in the trenches, right?
At the actual startups in the VC, one of the VC funds or whatnot.
Like within TPG, like at the private equity fund level, like within the deal team, because these guys were going out, sourcing deals, finding like these, super innovative companies that
diamonds in the rough. Yeah. Needles in the haystack. Yep.
Exactly. I mean, I think these companies were like game changing, right? Like these are the things that like shake markets and transform markets. And I mean, in TPG was like earlier investors in like Box, Uber, Airbnb, like some big names, and it was just impossible to not be completely like just mesmerized by that. And I was like, man, that's what I want to do. Found myself reading, kind of being captivated by like the investment theses and the kind of the glue that made it all make sense from a strategic macro level. that's the understanding that I wanted to go after, and that's the impact that I wanted to have in my career. Because that stuff was really game changing. Knew I wasn't going to at least get to contribute to a company that was going to change an entire market by working in corporate finance.
So what made you comfortable enough to kind of leave your position, or if that's what happened, I guess, what happened for you to say, hey, I'm going to go to one of these venture programs and spend, you have to spend money, right? It's like more like a university. So tell me about that decision. And I think I know the answer, but I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for asking. And it was really, one of my stepdad's favorite sayings is, like, all we have is today, right? He's like, I mean, you never know. I mean, you've only got like right now, so like live, while you're alive. And I mean, he's preached that my whole life. So, I mean, I'm adopted that myself as a mantra for life. And I just wasn't. Money is just money. That's another one of his sayings. Like money can be replaced, money can be remade. But your life is finite. Our time on this earth is precious. And I think that our window of opportunity to positively impact the world in a way that makes the lives of the people who live on this planet better, enriches those experiences. Like that is so the fulfillment that you would get, right? Even from like the possibility of kind of having a role to play in that, it just makes it more than worth it to take a gamble financially. And I wouldn't have always done that, by the way. I would never before my career have had the guts to go and like just leave straight up, just like leave a company. But yeah, I did. And I not looked back since. I don't regret it. So glad I did. About the same time, like found Venture University on LinkedIn, because my first thought after I left the role was like, okay, knew I was going to kind of like do the soul searching period, but like, oh shit, I need to get a job, right? So yeah, Venture University came up. Again, like it's kind of similar to like private equity, knew a little bit about it, but not a lot about it. But I did know that this program was kind of a hybrid, like VC, PE, investor accelerator type of thing. And that's exactly, it could not have been, it was like the stars lined up, it's just like, okay, I left this role because I know that I wanted to have an impact in this way from this strategic angle, like deal side. And here's this program like falling, right into my lap, right? Like on the search results in LinkedIn, and that's exactly what it exists for, is to help people like transition into that. So honestly, it was inevitable like that I ended up there. I really believe that.
So looking back on like your whole path so far, any words of wisdom you would have given to your younger self or to the young listeners out there before we call the pod?
Yeah, I would. I absolutely. Man, talk to as many people as you can in as many spaces that you even have an inclination that an itch that you might be interested in that space. Go ahead and get on LinkedIn, go ahead and tap into your alumni network, reach out through like any means that you have, reach out to me. I'm happy to steer you guys. Because I believe that it makes such a difference in life. And it could have, life is about the journey. I'm happy and I'm content by my journey thus far. But if you want to really just kind of make the most out of your time you have here, kind of tying everything together, right? Find out what you don't know. Like realize that you don't know what you don't know, and go out there and talk to people. That was probably the one mistake that I made. It sounds really kind of poetic to say like I followed in my uncle's footsteps, but the reality was there were probably 5 other career options or paths that would have been, if not more, probably many more than that, would have been much better suited to me. And
or maybe your learning type, maybe your right brain would have been, there is a career out there. Maybe you should have been an artist or a musician. I feel like my daughter is a very right brained, and I'm always thinking like, what would be good for her, Where could we
Yeah.
steer? Yeah.
Yes, Patrick, I've asked myself that through so many
Well, the
shower.
pain, the suffering of math, right? When you have a right brain dominant. Yeah, it's really
Yeah,
interesting. I think that's fascinating.
that, and then like to piggyback on what you just said, I think this is going to be another poor analogy, so y'all bear with me, but
That's all good.
if anybody grew up playing The Sims, I did. You remember The Sims?
Yeah, I played. Yeah.
Okay. So like, let's go back for a second. You're creating your character. Your character is picking a career path, right? I think it probably part of this was me being a first gen college student and not really just kind of part of it was that, but part of it was just me not taking the impetus to like chase down information and discover, right?
That's normal, man. I did the same thing. Sorry, continue your thought. I think at 20 years old, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know that you should be talking to a wide variety of people. That's why it's such important advice. I agree 100%.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, with that as well, and I think that my like just incorrect perception back when I was an undergrad was that creatives went to go earn lower salaries and be musicians or music band directors or artists, right? Struggling artists or like that's the life of a right brainer. And if you follow your creativity and there's a small chance you might be really successful and make it big or something. But
right.
The thing is, I mean, I can tell you this firsthand as somebody who is currently interviewing with Bain, BCG, to explore those career paths. There is a world of opportunity out there in the business ecosystem for creatives. I mean, design, like industrial design, that doesn't mean like manufacturing. That means like designing websites and products, right? To just kind of fit the human and the user better. Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's such there's like a whole world out there for right brainers. So yeah.
Totally. I need to do more research, but I agree. Well, listen, Carlos, really appreciate your time. Longer than usual, but I love this story. I love the honesty and the advice. So thank you so much for taking the time to share with our listeners.
Thank you for taking an interest and for interviewing me. I appreciate it. It's an awesome experience.
Thanks, man.
And thanks to you, my listeners at Wall Street Oasis. If you have any suggestions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to send them my way, Patrick at wallstreetoasis.com. Until next time.